Have you ever wondered why the minor pentatonic scale is the ultimate go-to for beginners when they're learning to improvise? Well, let me tell you something. Advanced players use this scale all the time as well. And there's a reason for it. It's because the minor pentatonic scale fits perfectly over major and minor chords, and it's designed that way on purpose. And when you learn how to use this to your advantage, you can use the minor pentatonic scale all the time and sound good almost over any chord progression that's being played. Now, when I meet guitarists that are starting to learn how to solo, they'll come in and they'll tell me, bro, I already know my minor pentatonic scale. I need to learn some modes or something like that. And then I'll quiz them on their pentatonic scale, and a lot of times they just fail miserably. They know the first shape and they can't get through the other five, and then they have a terrible time trying to weave them together. And I always tell them we need to go back a little bit, understand why the minor pentatonic scale is so important, and then begin to build that foundation for soloing, and then expand after you have a good handle on the minor pentatonic scale. So today's lesson, I'm just going to give you guys some insight as to why I think the scale is so important, and hopefully help you make some connections in what I think is really important kind of theory wise. I'm not going to get super deep into theory, but even if you understand a little bit, I think you'll be able to grasp this lesson. So let's dig into it. The way I like to start off explaining it is that the minor pentatonic scale is a 5-note scale, okay? And it's derived from both the major scale, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, and the natural minor scale. Both of those scales are related to one another and they belong in the same key. Now, if you don't know what a key is just a collection of 7 notes. Now, for examples, I like to use the key of C major because it has all the natural notes and you don't have to worry about sharps or flats. So I'm just going to give you guys the explanation in the key of C. So the key of C major has 7 notes. When you play those 7 notes on guitar, you get C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. So you get 7 notes, 8 including the octave, right, that make up that scale. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Now, the first note in that scale is the C note. That note belongs to a major chord, okay? So C major is the root note of the C major scale. Now, that's the 6th note in that scale is the A note. So if I go C, D, E, F, G, A, I go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I hit the A. The A note belongs to a minor chord. So it's the 6th note in the scale and it belongs to a minor chord. Now, when you look at the key of C major, if you like Google it and you find the chords, you're going to see that there are 3 major chords, 3 minor chords, and 1 diminished chord. And it goes like this. C major is the 1 chord, D minor is the 2 chord, E minor is the 3 chord, F major is the 4 chord, G major is the 5 chord, A minor is the 6 chord, and B diminished is the 7th chord. Now, when you're looking at a key, they have 2 chords that are called the relative major and minor of each other. In the key of C major, it's C major and A minor. Students often ask me, why is A minor the relative minor? Why isn't it D minor or E minor? Now, that it can be confusing at first, but to not get into like the nitty gritty, the way I like to explain relative major and minor to my students is that when you look at the notes of the chords, the A minor chord, the 6th note in the key, that chord has the root note of the 1 chord in it. So it's the only minor chord that has the root note of the 1 chord. So the 1 chord is C major, the 6th chord is A minor, C major has the note C, E, G, and A minor has the notes A, C, E. If you look at the other chords in the key, the other minor chords, you're going to see that D minor has D, F, and A, and E minor has E, G, and B. So the A minor chord, because it has that root note, we would say that's the closest in relationship to the 1 chord. Okay, hope that didn't lose you. But anyway, the 1 chord and the 6th chord are the relative major and the relative minor. Now, If you understand that, when you look at the minor pentatonic scale, the one that starts on the 5th fret and it goes like this, that note or that scale has 5 notes in it, and the notes are A, C, D, E, G. Okay, those are the 5 notes. Now those 5 notes fit perfectly on chord progressions that revolve around C major and A minor, and that's why this scale ends up fitting so good. So when we look at this scale and we line up the chords in the key, we're going to see that the one chord C, E, and G is C major. Okay, so that one chord, the notes in the A minor pentatonic scale, it has C, E, and G. It has all 3 of those notes in that scale. So that scale fits perfectly on that chord. Now, if you go to the 2 chord, you have D, F, and A. The minor pentatonic scale, A minor, has 2 of the 3 notes of that chord. It has the D and the A note. If you look at the 3 chord, you have E minor. E minor has the notes E, G, and B. If you look at the A minor pentatonic scale, it has 2 of the 3 notes for the E minor chord. If you look at the 4 chord, the F, you have F, A, C. Again, you have the A and the C, so you have 2 notes that fit over top of that chord. If you look at the G major chord, you have the notes G, B, and D. So you also have the G and the D note that fit over top of the G major chord. If you look at the A minor chord, you have the A, C, E notes, and all 3 of those notes are in the A minor pentatonic scale. And then you get to the B diminished, B, D, and F. Nobody plays the diminished chord anyway. Well, at least as a beginner, you're not going to be using that one. But you'd still have 1 note on that one. You have the D note in that case. So anyway, if we eliminate the diminished chord and we look at the other chords in the key, we're going to see that most of the time, if one of those chords pops up, if you randomly play the minor pentatonic scale, you have a pretty good chance of landing on at least one of those notes that belong in that chord. So why is this important? This is important because a lot of times when you're soloing, you want to try to land on either chord tones or at least tones that sound kind of pleasing to the chords that are being played. Now the pentatonic scale purposely leaves out 2 notes. It leaves out the B note and the F note, and it leaves those notes out on purpose because those notes cause more tension than the other notes that are in the scale. And these 2 notes, although you can play them, because of that tension, if you don't know how to control it, which most beginners don't know how to control, they'll land on those notes and they'll hang there, and what they play sounds bad and they go, oh, I don't like the sound of that. And it's not necessarily because it's a bad sound, it's because they don't know how to control that sound. So anyway, when we look at that minor pentatonic scale, you can see that for most of the chords you have, since there's 5 notes in the minor pentatonic scale, if we land on like the C or the A, you have a 3 out of 5 chance of landing on a good note. Okay, if you land on the other chords that belong in the key that are not the major or the relative minor, you have a 2 out of 5 chance. That's still pretty good odds, believe it or not. 2 out of 5 is pretty good odds. Now, when I have students that ask me, bro, I want to learn the major scale because it has more notes, so it's got to be a better scale, right? I tell them, no, not necessarily. Just because you have more notes doesn't necessarily mean better sounds, right? So especially when you're starting out to do this, if you look at the same chords and you line them up to the major scale, again, now if you don't know this, it doesn't even matter. Just think about it like philosophically, right? We're just thinking about this as an idea. What happens is you have 3 out of 7 notes because the major scale has 7 notes. So you have a 3 out of 7 chance of hitting one of those chord tones on the C major chord or the A minor. That's less, those odds are not as good as the A minor pentatonic scale where we had 3 out of 5. The other remaining chords, yeah, you're still going to have a 3 out of 7 because all the notes that are in the chords are in that scale, but that probability is still worse because you still have 4 notes that you could land on that could be bad notes. So anyway, long story short, probability-wise, the minor pentatonic scale is a safer scale to use when you're learning to improvise and you're playing on backing tracks. So that track that I played in the beginning, I believe the chords are just C, E minor, A minor, and G. I believe that's the chords that I'm playing on that backing track. And basically, when I did that little improv in the beginning, I was caring zero about the notes I was landing on. I was just trying to play through just the minor pentatonic scale. And I was trying to leave out the thought of what chords are going on and just more or less use my ear instead. And that's what I always try to tell students to do when they start practicing this pentatonic scale, is use your ear and try to just move to another note, right? Because like I said, your probability of getting to a note that sounds good is pretty good. So if you kind of move to another note and you hang there, you'll probably sound good. And sometimes I'll tell them just test staying on one note and letting all the chords revolve around it, and then make a decision, do any of them really sound bad? Most of the time you're going to say no, they don't. They all sound okay, actually. I'm going to give you guys a little example here of me playing with this track, and I'm just going to let these notes ring out over the track as the chords change so we can hear what they sound like. So I'm just playing mode 1, and I'm literally just going to hang on each note through the whole thing and let it kind of loop here. Okay, so just kind of listening to that, you can see like I let every one of those chords just sort of revolve around each note, and none of them really sounded bad. So why is it when you start practicing the scale that you don't like what you play? Well, that comes into another aspect of this, which is just not knowing the scale good enough, right? So what I always tell students, I want to give you guys a little game plan here. So if you just started messing with the pentatonic scale, what I always tell students to do, step 1, is going to be to memorize the 5 shapes. Now, there are 5 shapes for the minor pentatonic scale, and they overlap perfectly with the key, right? So it's going to be literally all 5 of those notes, A, C, D, E, G, and then it's going to repeat across the entire neck, and it looks like this. C, D, E, G, A, C, D, E, G, A, C, D, D, E, G, A, C, D, E, G, A, C, D, E, E, G, A, C, D, E, G, A, C, D, E, G. And then I usually come back down here and I go G, A, C, D, E, G, A, C, D, E, G, A. And basically I tell them, okay, you have to memorize those 5 shapes, but memorizing them isn't good enough. You always have to build speed with a scale when you first learn it. So what your first step should be with the scale before you even try to solo or anything is get to where you have some fluency with the scale, because this is the biggest problem I see most students have, is when they try to play the scale, there's no fluency in just playing the scale. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with just playing the scale, although you may not like the way it sounds. At first, that is the first step, is being able to just play and meander through the scale. Now, how do you get to that point? You have to, if you understand eighth notes, right, which is 2 notes per click, you can either start with a drum beat, or you can start with a metronome, and you have to find the tempo you can do it at, whether it's 80 beats per minute or whatever, 70, 60, wherever you can do it in time with a metronome or a drum beat. You're going to start at that tempo and you're going to build it up all the way until you get to 160 beats per minute with eighth notes. Now, why is that? It's because that's when you start to get to those speeds, you start to fluently run through the scale. You start closing this gap of how much time you have to think about positions, and you just start going into autopilot mode where you just start playing. That's where you want to get to. One, two, three, four. Okay, and that's what the tempo is at 160. Now, it's not like I was going crazy blazing fast, but I was going faster than what a lot of students are able to do. When they come in, they tell me they know the pentatonic scale. And you have to think about the reasoning behind this speed building thing. If you go and you look up a backing track, and the backing track is 100 beats per minute, right? If you can't play eighth notes at 100 beats per minute, then you're never going to be able to fluently flow through that track. If the track's 120 beats per minute, you're never going to be able to do it. So what happens is you're actually crutching yourself from being able to play on these tracks. And until you start to work on the speed, whether you want to play fast or not, it doesn't matter. Speed builds fluency. It's not about, shredding pentatonics. But anyway, if you're playing to the metronome at 120 beats per minute, you could put on a 120 beats per minute backing track in A minor, and voila, you should be able to run through it, no problem. And that would be your first step. Step 2 is, once you're able to get through the scale straight up and down, you are going to ascend one scale and descend the next one. That's going to look like this. So again, if I put that 160 back on, it's going to look like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now if you notice, I went through that 2 times. Why did I do that? I went through that twice because when you do the ascend and descend, what happens is by the time you get back to the beginning, your routine flips on itself. Meaning this, when you start it, you're ascending the first position. When you go through all 5, you will be descending the first position when you get back to this point, and then everything goes in the opposite direction. So it's really important when you start ascending and descending, you go through twice to make sure you start ascending, go through all 5, and then when you return back to that first one, you should be on the descend on mode 1. Okay, those are going to be the first 2 steps you have to do. If you get through that, then you're going to really enjoy the next pentatonic lesson that I put out, which is going to be more practicing exercises, and even I'm going to throw you guys some soloing tips. Anyway, I don't want this lesson to go super long again. I really appreciate everybody watching this, and thank you guys. Please like and subscribe this video, share it. Also, check out my guitar flashcards on Amazon if you're interested in getting into the music theory, and I also have a music theory course on my website, tuningguitarcourses.com. Guys, God bless. Thank you again. Bye.